Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Portland Public Schools podcast. This is going to be our episode number 20, and we are live here in the Town Tech Educational Podcast Studio at Portland High School. And with us this afternoon is our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Charles Britton. So, good afternoon, Charles. How are you?
Dave, it's great to be back. Thanks for having me, as always.
Fantastic. We just got through with Ryan's podcast, and we had our Chatham Health Director, Russ Melmet, on and so forth. So I know you were on a call with him yesterday. So tell us, we had the governor gave his State of the State yesterday. So why don't you give us the State of the State here for the school district?
Sure. I talk to Russ almost every week. He's really, we're very lucky to have him. He's a tremendous resource for this town. And it's been fun watching the Olympics too. Connecticut is representing well, huh?
Yes.
So go USA. That's awesome.
My God.
We're doing quite well. So, the big part of what the governor talked about was the update on the budget, right? And it certainly sounds like Connecticut is doing better, certainly than we were even 3-4 years ago. It's sort of shocking how quickly we go from deficit to surplus is almost how quickly we go from huge infection rates of COVID to almost dropping down like a stone, right?
Yes.
But I think we're in a good place in the state, and I do want to talk about the budget with everybody. But certainly I know that the hot topics are now the expiring mask mandate and the expiring requirement that school employees either are vaccinated or submitting weekly negative COVID tests.
Yes.
Right? And that's been going on now since about October. Right?
Yep.
So as I understand it, we have all been required to wear masks as a function of executive order, which carries the force of law.
Yep.
And those executive orders are scheduled to expire on February 15th.
Yep.
Now, we expect that on February 14th, the legislature is going to vote to extend those for a couple of weeks to give us all an opportunity to prepare until February 28th. And then on February 28th, those executive orders would end, and the decision about whether to require masks and continue to require vaccinations for school employees would become a local decision.
Yep.
Right. Here in Portland, our Board of Education adopted 2 emergency policies throughout the pandemic.
Okay.
One policy was adopted in September 2020 that established the expectation that we all wear masks while in school.
Yep.
The other was adopted more recently in October that established the expectation that school employees be vaccinated or submit weekly tests.
Mm-hmm.
The policies are quote unquote emergency policies.
Yep.
Now, the complicating part about those policies is that as of yet, I have not heard anybody in official capacity declare an end to the emergency, right? So if the emergency were declared over, then those policies would be moved. Right, because their emergency is over. Those are emergency policies, not necessary. But if the executive order expires on the 28th and the emergency isn't declared over, then those are still the policies for our schools because the Board of Education sets policy for the schools.
Correct.
So either one of 3 things essentially would need to happen. One, the board would take no action and leave those policies in place, and we would continue to wear masks and require vaccination. 2, the board would repeal the policies, and then essentially we would default to the recommendations of our health officials.
Mm-hmm.
Or 3, the board would repeal and replace the policy with something different.
Okay.
So that's where we are, and it's all happening quickly, right? And the capacity I am in is to advise the board on what the next steps would be.
Sure.
As part of my process of developing what advice I will give the board, I'm asking for lots of input from lots of different people. I'm asking for faculty, staff, students, parents to give me input about what they'd like to see. Specifically, I've sent out some surveys and I want to gather people's input. Everybody has a say in this, and I don't think any one of us knows any better than anybody else. So
Right.
all of our opinions are equal.
Sure.
Right? I'm also asking for board attorneys. We use our Shipman and Goodwin law firm. I want their advice about how we should proceed. Also, certainly interested in the recommendations from Russ and the State Department of Public Health and the Connecticut State Department of Education. I expect that we're going to get guidelines from them. I know they're working on them quickly. I think that's part of the reason why the governor's asked for a 2-week extension on this. And we should get those soon. I will cull all of that information together and make a recommendation to the board as it pertains to the 2 emergency policies and what action I would advise them to take. But ultimately, the board is going to need to take some action to repeal the policy, keep the policy, or amend it in some way.
Okay.
And that's all likely going to happen in the late February, early March timeframe, as things start to become clearer and guidance starts to be, and input starts to be pulled together.
Okay.
Right now, if I were in a position where somebody said to me today, and I say this with the caveat that my thinking is subject to change based on input from people, but my advice would be that we do what we've done since the beginning of the pandemic, which is align our practices to local and state health guidelines.
Sure.
Where those guidelines recommend people wear masks and get vaccinated, I suggest the public schools recommend that people wear masks and get vaccinations. Where the Department of Public Health requires that people wear masks and be vaccinated, then I would suggest that the schools, of course, require. Right? So that's an important distinction, but ultimately, the Department of Public Health have the expertise. They have the right letters after their name.
Yep.
My advice to the town right now would be align your practices with the guidelines established by the Department of Public Health. If those guidelines recommend, we recommend.
Sure.
If they require, we require.
Yeah. Yeah, and that kind of makes sense. I think, because you're going to gather a lot of information from your surveys and so forth, so you'll get a sense of the, the pulse and the appetite of all of the parent and so forth, and even the students to that point.
Right.
So it'll give you a little bit of information to base your decision making, and obviously the decision making of the board.
Of course, yeah, and I will share all of that information in the context.
Sure.
But what I have to say to Russ and to the Department of Public Health is that you are the experts. I am not. All I can do is align my recommendations to yours.
Sure.
So make your recommendations,
Yep.
and those likely would be the ones that I would bring forward. And that's kind of the way I sort of see things heading as of today. Now, that is absolutely subject to change based on input I get from the community or guidelines from the state, right? But ultimately, I imagine, and I know Russ and the Department of Public Health is being thoughtful about this because, we have to look to them for that guidance.
Exactly.
And, I'm not in a position where I think we should supersede or overstep their guidance because I'm not the expert. They are.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how is our faculty and staff fared with the Omicron variants?
It's been an amazing month.
Okay.
3 weeks ago, when I tell you there has never been more COVID in our schools, every day dozens of people were reporting positive cases.
Right.
Faculty, staff, and students.
Yeah.
And that's consistent with our experiences last year with Delta or Alpha or whatever the original one was.
Yeah.
It shot up like a rocket, and then over the past 2 weeks, it is dropping like a stone.
Okay.
So, this week in particular, I've seen an infinitesimal amount compared to where we were 2 weeks ago.
Right.
So we're on the other side of the curve now.
Right, on the downhill side. And I think that's generally the statistics that have been playing out not only statewide but nationwide too.
Sure.
As far as that goes.
Absolutely.
Which is a good thing. Now Russ said in our town policy right now the infection rate is still up there, but by the same token, the severity of the symptoms and the illnesses are nowhere near what they were, with the original.
Right. And again, whether that's a function of a weaker virus or a function of a more immune population because of vaccines.
Vaccines, sure.
I can only speculate.
Or both there,
but, yeah. The good news is everybody I know, and I know a lot of people at this point who have gotten it have generally not felt well, maybe for a short period of time, but
right.
Have recovered and are back and doing well.
Well, I know that the prevalence now of obviously the self-home tests are, being rolled out, and they're readily available and so forth. We put the link on, for the ones that were mailed out by the Postal Service. We put that link on the website as far as that goes, and we've got a whole lot of the test kits delivered that are available. I think Don Guin, our EOC director, has just delivered a whole boxes of them at the town hall, so they are available.
That's right. And at this point, what's interesting about that, Dave, is the way I see it is, if it came to the point where masks came off,
yep,
we have many other tools in our tool belt now.
Sure. Yep.
Clearly, vaccination.
Yep.
Widespread tests are available here in the schools, and we're giving them out regularly. If people ask for them or are showing signs and symptoms.
Yeah.
And we have a closet full of KN95 and surgical masks.
Yeah.
So, unlike the beginning of the pandemic where we had no vaccines, no tests, and
No
very
masks.
few masks,
Yeah.
and a limited understanding of what this thing is we're dealing with, and we're completely uncertain. 2 years in, the resources are here, and we understand what we need to do to hopefully stave off more widespread infections.
Yes, and I think that's what Russ kind of alluded to. We're more approaching from the pandemic stage to the endemic stage.
Right.
As far as that goes, and again, dealing with what we're dealing with, and and moving on.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing. So that's great. So tell us what's on the budget front.
Yeah, so I'm excited to talk about this. We are knee deep in designing our budget and I'm making sure everybody understands what's in it. And what I like to think of when I consider the budget is I love this quote, right? And it's from a gentleman named Jack Lew. He says, "The budget is not just a collection of numbers, but an expression of our values and aspirations."
There you go.
Right. And I think one of the things I'm most excited about with this budget is that we worked really hard to make sure the budget supports our priorities.
Yeah.
Right? Not just, well, this is the way it's always been. Let's continue to fund that. Right? We not only asked ourselves what amounts we should fund, but we took a hard look at what we're funding to make sure that our funding priorities reflect our values and aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically, I'm confident that if adopted the way the board has already approved it, the way the board has laid out the budget, it will support our goals going into next year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd love to go over both the goals and how I think the funding is there to support it. I can do this pretty quickly.
Sure, why not?
So our first goal this year, and I think it will be our goal next year, is to make sure that we're focused on health and safety. Right? We need to maximize students' safety in schools and the health and well-being of our faculty, staff, and students. To that end, I'm happy to report that the next year's budget funds all of our school nurses, our heroes. Really. Funds all of our custodians, also heroes.
Yes.
And those two groups of people are directly responsible for keeping us clean, safe, and healthy.
They showed up every day.
Absolutely. Nurses, fully funded. Custodians, fully funded. Our IT staff, fully funded. We have other kinds of viruses in the technical sense, malware, spyware. Another way to keep us safe.
The cyber realm.
Cyber dangers, sure. All those positions are fully funded. A security guard here at the high school funded. And all of those individuals who have frontline responsibilities to keep us safe and healthy are going to be provided the equipment, resources, support, and training that they need to do their job.
Mm-hmm.
I've also added one new position in the budget. We have added an assistant principal for the secondary school, and that assistant principal will have responsibility for athletics. So it's an assistant principal with responsibility for athletics. We need that position also to keep us safe and healthy, right? Athletics is one area where injuries can happen very quickly, and it's an area that needs oversight and supervision and careful monitoring. And this individual will provide that for athletics, but also be here in the school to help our principals make sure that things run smoothly and that any dangers in the school are quickly addressed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm confident that if adopted and supported by the town, we'll be able to continue to maximize our student, faculty, and staff health and safety here in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that we're focused on, and these are kind of in order of importance, are the social and emotional well-being of our students, faculty, and staff.
Right.
It's been a rough couple of years.
It has.
Right? I don't know what other shoe's going to fall next when the masks come off, right? But it's been a very anxious, traumatic, challenging time for our professionals and for our students.
Sure.
Right? And we're seeing that in some of the needs of our kids. So we need to continue to prioritize our student, faculty, staff, social, emotional, behavioral needs, right? To that end, the budget fully funds all of our clinicians, our social workers, our school psychologists, our counselors, our board-certified behavior analysts. It fully funds all of our support programming, our ABA, our RISE, our Harbor, our Bridges, our relationships with professional services, our OT, our PT, all of the people that come in to help our students manage social and emotional needs. And all of those individuals are going to be provided the resources, training, and support they need to continue providing that support for our children.
Uh-huh.
So I'm happy about that. We've also added several paraprofessionals to the budget. Paraprofessionals are also heroes. They work directly with students, some cases one-on-one, to make sure that all students are able to access our curriculum. So the prioritization of social and emotional well-being is front and center in our budget next year.
Sure.
The third one, I will quickly mention that we are still a learning organization, and that teaching and learning is front and center in our minds.
Yep.
The budget, I'm happy to say, makes no cuts to our certified faculty. Right, all of our teachers here this year will continue to have positions next year. We're not cutting any teaching positions.
Uh-huh.
That will enable us to have reasonable class sizes. And of course, all of our teachers will continue to have access to the curriculum, instruction, resources, supplies that they need to continue to support teaching and learning in their classroom.
Mm-hmm.
The fourth goal is a function of our commitment to increasing equity and promoting civil discourse in our schools. Our generation of educators, we are continuing to work to bend the arc of history towards justice, right?
Yep.
Equity is a front and center consideration of everything we do. And equity really means to me that we don't treat every student the exact same. In some cases, some students need more.
Yeah,
if it's
absolutely.
a second language
It's
learner,
not a one-size-fits-all.
a student with a disability, students who have other types of needs. Our budget prioritizes making sure that all students have the supports that they need to access the curriculum, and that our entire community is committed to the concept of living our founding fathers' dreams for our nation. Right?
Sure.
And we're going to continue to promote that in our schools, make sure all of our students are supported and welcomed and loved here. And I think the budget does a great job of that by continuing to support the people and programs that we are building out. And then the last one I wanted just to spend a little bit of time with, and I imagine we're going to have several podcasts devoted to this, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
Our school buildings are in tough shape.
Yes.
Anybody hearing me say that who knows anything about Valley View, Brownstone, or Gildersleeve would probably not be shocked to hear that
Yeah.
our buildings need a lot of work.
They do.
They need a ton of work. They're old, and they're showing their age. 2 years ago, we commissioned a study, a facility study, and we know from that report that over the next 10 years, our schools need about $25 million worth of work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's roofs, windows, boilers, parking lots, code violations, abatement for hazardous materials,
Yep.
electrical upgrades, it's air handling units, HVAC systems.
Yes.
My goodness, the report, these buildings are old, and anybody who owns a home knows that you need to keep your house up.
Yep, exactly.
Now, that report is 2 years old. That was $25 million 2 years ago, and it projects out 10 years. If we account for inflation, I think that $25 million is probably closer to $35 million over 10 years.
Yes.
Right? Now, before we just say, well, that's what we need, let's go get it, I think we have to ask ourselves as a school district and as a community, do we want to invest in 5 schools for 1,300 students? Right? Do we want to continue to have students going to pre-KK and 1 at Valley View, and then going across town and being grades 3, 4, 5 at Gildersleeve, and going back across town and going to grades 5, 6 at Brownstone, and then going up the hill and going grades 7, 8 at the middle school, and then going to 9, 12 at the high school? That's a lot.
Sure.
Right? Is there a better way to do it? Is there a way to consolidate our buildings, to consolidate our grades, right? Some people are probably hearing that and inferring from that, they're thinking about closing a building, right? Well, it's being discussed.
It could be, yeah.
And we have a very talented committee, dedicated committee that's working on this now. We've hired a firm to come in and help guide some of that analysis that we're doing. And by the end of the year, I think we're going to start engaging the community with some focus groups and some surveys and some discussions about what Portland is going to look like over the next 5 to 10 years.
Sure.
So while that work is happening, we do know we have 5 buildings, and we're investing in the maintenance and upkeep that we need to otherwise continue operating as we are into next year.
Right.
So I imagine that was a lot.
Oh yeah.
That's a lot.
Well,
Yeah.
I think when you're looking at infrastructure, I think that has been an issue not only in the school systems but nationwide. Where our bridges, our roads, our water systems, our sewer systems, have been neglected, and you have just like you said, if you own a house, you have to upgrade it, put money into it, to sustain it. So I think. You're realizing basically what everybody else is realizing.
I am. And the other things we have to remember, Brownstone was built in 1932.
Sure.
In 1932, Newtown hadn't happened.
No.
Right. In 1932, the planet wasn't warming to the point that every building in Connecticut needed air conditioning.
Yeah.
In 1932, there wasn't a pandemic that we had science that said you need really good HVAC and circulation to create high quality indoor air.
Yes.
Right? And because of that, you have a building built for another generation that's serving different needs for the current generation. And that's true at Gildersleeve and Valley View too.
Yeah.
So as we look at this, we have to consider not only the age and the wear and tear on the buildings, but what the buildings need in order to support teaching and learning, where school security, a warming planet, indoor air quality, and a 21st century technology-rich environment need to exist in order to keep our kids safe, healthy, and prepare them effectively for the future.
Sure. Well, I think again that's where we have to take a hard look at ourselves, and and it takes money to ride the train.
Right.
That's literally
right. And trust me, that's an important point, because we know from the facility study that we have is that the bill is $25 to $30 million over the next 10 years. That's what we know. Mm-hmm. But are there more effective and cheaper ways to accomplish what we need and create a better educational environment. I think there are cheaper ways and more efficient ways for us to do the work of the Portland Public Schools.
Yep.
So stay tuned.
Okay. Well, fair enough. Fair enough. Excellent. Well, I think everybody. I know Ryan's been engrossed right now with the budget process, and he's got a lot of work on his plate. As far as not only balancing the school systems, but all of the other departments within the town and so forth that also need have demands on them and to do business and you often hear the term, well, that's the cost of doing business. Well, unfortunately it's true.
Right.
Especially if you're going to you serve the town's population and making sure all of the tax dollars that people pay they're getting their money's worth.
Correct. And I hope anybody listening to this knows that we are aware of the demands on the tax base. No, that is not far from our minds in terms of any considerations that we bring forward.
Yeah.
That all of us, that I own property in another district. I would expect that the people making decisions about the quality of education in the town are aware of the bill that I get every year to support that.
Yeah.
And I know that's happening here in Portland.
Sure.
That is absolutely essential for people to know that we are good stewards of taxpayer funds.
Exactly. So great. All right, Charles. Anything else you want to go over before we wrap it up here?
No, just let everybody know. Stay tuned on the mask and vaccine thing. Please tune in to the budget process. If anybody ever has any questions about any of those things, my email address is on the website. I feel like everybody at this point has my cell phone number and is welcome to text or call, and people do.
There you go.
Please don't feel bad or like you're imposing on anybody's time. Call and ask, and we'll make sure that everybody gets the information.
Well, like I say, the doors are always open.
Doors are always open.
So, okay. All right, Dr. Charles Britton, this is our episode number 20 of the Portland School District Podcast. We're here in the Town Tech Educational Podcast Studio. I'm your host, Dave Kuzminski. So, all right, before you go, Charles, who you got in the Super Bowl?
Oh, boy. Well, my Jets aren't there yet, so I really don't care. I might be waiting a long time.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Well, go for it. So
I don't know. Go Cincinnati.
There you go. All right. Well, hey, they haven't. It's been a long dry spell for them, for sure. Again,
and they didn't get a beautiful new stadium, so I got to go for Cincinnati.
There you go. All right. Sounds like a plan. Okay, for all of us here at the Town Tech Educational Podcast Studio, stay safe, enjoy the Super Bowl, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks so much.